Hi, I'm Katelyn Wells, and you're watching the Permanent Rain Press.
Hi everyone, it's Chloe with the Permanent Rain Press. Today I am so happy to be joined by Katelyn Wells. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. I know we've been meaning to chat for a while, so I'm so excited that we can finally sit down, although it's in the midst of winter and everyone's feeling just a little under the weather. But I'm so excited to chat with you about The Abandons and your work in season one. But before we get into the show, what can you share about your background in the arts and what sparked that passion in you?
Well, I'd say I started doing community theater when I was a kid. And that was like my first foray into sort of performing and being on a stage and then acting in general. And that was like the first chance I had to realize, I think I was like 11 or something, and I did a Christmas play in my hometown. And I had so much fun. And then from there, I auditioned for an arts high school in Ottawa. So then I went there for 4 years. And in my first year there, I got an agent. And so, like, things just kind of started snowballing. But, like, theater was where I really started.
It's so interesting to hear about your theater background because I know that was a large part of your kind of beginnings. And you didn't talk about it, but you also have a great voice. I was watching some old covers of you singing Paramore and Taylor Swift during your quarantine series, which you don't do as many covers today, but it must have been so nice to explore that side.
Did I not delete those? Are those still online? Oh no. Okay, I'm really gonna rethink that. But thank you so much. Yeah, I really, I mean, I love singing. I'm not like trained or anything. I didn't have the money to take lessons when I was a kid. But for a while there, I thought that that would be the thing that I wanted to pursue. And the arts high school that I went to, it had like five streams of arts pathways that you could take. And you have to audition obviously in grade eight. So originally I had signed up to audition for the singing program. And then, I don't know, maybe like a month out, my dad very kindly said, "You know what I think you might be a little bit better at? Acting." And so, I'm really glad he said that. And I found so much joy in like what that audition process was. And then I loved my program. But yeah, for a hot second there, I thought maybe I'd be a singer, and I'm not.
I mean, never say never. I feel like it's just being in the arts lends itself to so many different avenues, and you are multifaceted. We'll talk about one of those other passions for you, which is writing. So, how did your passion for writing begin and the desire to develop your own stories?
Well, I've always been a very avid reader. That's my number one passion in life. Um, from, I don't know, maybe like the age of 9, every time I had a birthday or an opportunity where you give someone a present, I'd always ask for a book. I was that kid in high school that never went anywhere without her book. So, like, the idea of just reading and storytelling was always a part of what I was digesting as a kid. And then I loved those class projects where in elementary school your teacher would say, "Oh, great, okay, so today we're gonna be writing short stories." And I loved the imagination of it. When I was in high school, we had a lot of opportunity to actually be creators. So then I started writing plays. I was really into poetry, or I would write songs. And so I I don't think I have just like one favorite type of writing medium, but I've definitely dabbled in a lot of them, and I just find it so fulfilling using your words to create an entirely new story. That just to me is I love the like immersion of that.
It definitely lets your imagination run free in terms of boundaries a lot of the time. And something really interesting is you adapted Shane Mutlow's One Foot Over the Edge So tell me about Shane's story and why and how it spoke to you.
Yeah, so I met Shane, I'm gonna say maybe like 8 years ago now, and he was at a point in life, I think, where he had spent so long just trying to like come to terms with the things that he had experienced in life, and I guess came to a point where he was ready to share his story. And so when I met him, we met at like a truck stop in between where we live, because we live several hours from each other. And so when we met, I met him and I met his wife, and he was just so forthcoming with his background and what he had been through. And he said, do you think that there's something here to make a story out of? And the truth was there absolutely is. Shane's story is very tragic, but also very heartwarming. And essentially, it's a story of a man who um, went to Rwanda as a peacekeeper, didn't feel like there was much peace left to be kept there, and the things that he went through caused him to suffer a lot of trauma. So he came home suffering from PTSD. He spent 6 years undiagnosed and 20 years seeking treatment. So my story follows his 20-year journey in trying to find help. And although I don't write it up to the point that he meets me, the truth is, by the time he met me, he really was ready to open up and process a lot of what he had been through. So I felt really honored to be the person that could help tell his story, but I was also really impacted by how brave he was because, um, I mean, there's a lot of shame that comes along with these kinds of experiences often. Not that there needs to be, it's just that usually there is, sadly. And I remember the day that I met him, his wife had told me afterward, Katelyn, he told you things today that he's never even told me. And I mean, that's so generous, but it's also, I just think, a sign of where he was at in life and he was ready to share things that he had gone through to help other people. And that's like the thing about Shane. If you get to know him, he's just the most generous person. He's so loyal, he's so loving. So I was drawn to his story just because of the strength that he has.
Thank you for sharing all of that. And I think that what you were able to do kind of help him tell a story through a script is so special. And yeah, I was reading a bit about it. It follows his 20-year journey, like you mentioned, and recovery. Like there's themes of abandonment, not only by others, but by oneself as well. And I know the script did pretty well. It won awards at the Toronto International Women's Film Festival and Big Apple Film Festival and screenplay competitions. So on that front, like, are you still hoping to find a producer for One Foot Over the Edge as a feature, or are there other projects you're currently working on and pitching?
Yes to both. I'm still looking for a producer for that project. It's also that project was my first foray into professional screenwriting, and so it was for sure a steep learning curve in understanding this side of my industry and learning how you go from script to screen and the process of getting someone to read it and then produce it. So, um, just by trial and error, I found myself going from A to B, and I'm still looking for a producer for that project. I'm also working on some other projects to build up a portfolio. So yes to both.
Any teases you can share about what else you're currently working on, or is it under wraps right now?
At the moment, I have a writing partner, and we are working on a short film. I also have in the works a mini series that I'm writing. I have the concept, I'm building the outline, but that one's a little bit more preliminary than the other two.
Do you think stepping behind the camera in a like producing, directing front is on your horizon as well, or are you sticking to the writing?
Absolutely. No, I actually went to film school. I went to Ryerson, or it's TMU now, but when I went there, I went to Ryerson for their radio and television arts program. And they also, similar to my high school, they have different streams that you can take. And I remember a couple of my favorite classes had to do with either the business of producing or directing in and of itself. And the great part about that program is they give you a lot of hands-on opportunities to try your hand at things, to actually get up on your feet. I directed several short films while I was there. Um, I think in my fourth year, there was a pitch competition. You had to, with your team, develop a screenplay, whether it be a feature film or a TV series. We decided on a TV series. We wrote the pilot episode. You had to write an outline for the whole season, and then you had to create a pitch Bible and present it to a panel of judges. And I remember we won, and it was so exciting, but I loved the whole process of putting that together. And that was the first time I realized just how much power a producer has in the creative elements of it. For a long time, I didn't really understand exactly how a producer engaged with a project. You know, I understand they're in charge of financing and like more of the business affairs side of it. But as a producer, you really have a lot of say in what you produce, and so you have a unique opportunity to decide which stories get told. So I would absolutely love to dive into that again.
I guess it just gives you really like an overall perspective. And like you mentioned, a role like a producer is really key in shaping what you end up seeing as a final product. So you mentioned attending an arts high school and then Ryerson. So tell me about your studies, being immersed in your craft. How do you think it benefited your professional career as an actor today?
Well, going back to high school, I was in the drama program or the theater program. So unlike a normal high school experience where you might have semesters, I mean, we did, but I had a drama class every single day of every semester of high school. So that level of immersion in your craft is undoubtedly helpful because you're just constantly working that muscle, that acting muscle. And then if you go to my experience at Ryerson, in more of a behind the scenes, behind the camera role, I learned a lot of skills that help me as an actor today. Let's say editing. If I have a self tape, I have a lot of friends who find the editing of self tapes, even though to me it's quite basic, like pretty challenging because that's just a whole new concept for them. To me, I can do that like the back of my hand. But then also when I'm on set, um, I can be aware of what an editor might be looking for when they're in the booth by the time they get this footage. So it can help, I mean, it can help me understand how you should elongate a scene so that they have moments to cut around or, things like that. When you've worn both hats, you can kind of apply that knowledge to help the other one out.
For sure. I love how it seems like you're always thinking of others now. When you're the actor, you're like, how can I make your job easier? How can I make the process flow more efficiently? Which I think says a lot about you as a person as well. I want to talk about some of your biggest inspirations in the artistic field. Like, who would you say they are today, and how do they inspire you?
Um, I would say that I mean my greatest hero is Matt Damon and always has been. And that's a bit nostalgic as well, just because I think I was 10 when my dad introduced me to Good Will Hunting, which is my favorite movie. Um, and he was the one that told me that Matt Damon wrote that script with Ben Affleck, and it was kind of, I mean, I've since done more research on it, but like kind of as a result of the two of them feeling like they weren't getting the roles that they wanted, so they just went out and wrote it for themselves. And so that always was really inspiring to me because I'm very much someone who is of a go-getter attitude. If you want something, you should go make that happen. I remember being 10 and I really wanted to be Goodwill Hunting or like Will Hunting because I loved the idea that like your mind could be your ticket to where you want to go. Um, and I think that, he's just somebody who exudes a lot of respect for others and his kindness. I'm a big fan of Matt Damon. I also really love Kate Winslet. I really look up to her. She's the kind of person that like I would love to work with, but if I never do, oh man, would I love to know her as a person. So, yeah, I'd say that like the two of them would probably be two of my biggest inspirations.
And it's also how people carry themselves like so many years in the industry. And you look at people who, still are poised and are gracious to others and, newcomer actors coming in as well. So, I mean, I hope you get to work with some of your heroes in the future. But if not, you always have projects like Good Will Hunting.
Yeah,
But
I can always go back to those.
I mean, comfort films are no joke, right? They kind of shape who you are as a person, as an artist. You kind of look to these to always fill your mind with inspiration on what you could do as a career or for a project. Now, not including the abandons, what project has been the most pivotal in your career so far, and how did it leave an impact on you?
I think pretty easily I could say prior to the abandons, Ginny and Georgia changed my life for sure, and just the trajectory of my career. It was the first time I was playing a character who I knew from the beginning would be around for an entire season. I felt like I had been given more responsibility than I had ever been given before as an actor. And by that, I just mean more story to tell. And, there's a lot of trust that you have to give an actor to play something that is so significant to a series or a season. And so, it was exciting to get to feel like I could dig my heels into a character with more depth and longevity than I had before. It taught me a lot getting to come back to set week after week as opposed to being a day player. And you all have to start somewhere, and that's totally fine. And by the time that you get to that next level, you realize, oh, there are different lessons that I am learning. And there's something to be said about um, sustaining a character or sustaining, um, let's say, an arc. That I think teaches you a lot when you have to do that.
Let's talk a bit about Silver's arc in season three because I know it was a bit of a whirlwind. So, what were your overall thoughts on what happened? We will be discussing, I will leave some spoilers in here, so spoiler warning for all those watching. But tell me about her relationship with Max and then later on obtaining alcohol for Marcus and really the fallout for her at the end of the third season.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think that we're all a little disappointed that that is how it went down, and that's totally fair. And I think it would be a little concerning if we weren't disappointed. But also, my job as an actor is never to judge my character, but really to champion her. And so when I read the script, it was first I have to get over that, oh man. But then you go, okay, so why exactly would she do that? Because we know Silver to be a very empathetic person and we know her to be very thoughtful. But I found this to be pretty thoughtless or maybe careless is a better word. And so in that moment, I have to find a reason that makes sense for her. And the one that I had found was at the beginning of season three, you kind of get a hint of Silver's home life. And, perhaps it's not the healthiest or the best home life for her. So I just had to assume that there was a lot going on for her at the time um, that would cause her to just be a little more distracted than we'd ever seen her, a little bit more introverted, not introverted, but like less open with others. And so that affected her relationship with Max. She wasn't very present in their relationship. It certainly affected her relationship with Marcus because she helps provide him the chance to be destructive in his own life. And so it's disappointing what she did, but at the same time, I can understand how it might have happened. And I also have to remember that she's a teenager. And as nice as it would be to say, yeah, of course we know what the right thing to do is, don't do that. It's also like, how do we know that every teenager knows how to handle that situation or knows what signs to look for? Because, I mean, there is a difference between a teenager experimenting with things and a teenager abusing things like alcohol or drugs. And so, the one thing I always loved about Silver is that when it came down to Marcus and her, she was always there for him as a friend, even in the worst of things, even in this moment where he is suffering from, alcohol abuse. She was at least still a friend that he never had to hide that from, or he never had to, lie to. I still think that in a way, she might be one of the healthiest friendships that he has at the moment.
That's so well said. And I love how you noted that they're also teenagers. I know you're a bit older than Silver, but it's one of those things where you can't always see the signs, or you maybe don't want to admit to yourself that something is wrong or that yourself or someone else needs help at that younger age. I think that you're currently filming season 4 right now, and I know you won't be able to say much on that front, but being on the show, like working with this cast and also being introduced to so many new fans and followers, what has that side been like for you?
Um, Very cool. The reason I say that is because the more people who watch your work, the more opportunity you have to do more work, honestly. And as a working actor, that's just kind of the goal. But also, there's something very validating in going, great, so I put myself out there because being an actor is a very vulnerable thing to do. And it's almost never a one-woman show. So you do have a team of people that you're doing that with, but Ginny and Georgia is so well received, and that feels great because you feel like you're putting your best foot forward and people are liking what they see. So like that's very, very rewarding. Um, but yeah, just career-wise, it's lovely getting to feel like you have an audience for the work that you're doing. And hopefully that is an audience that you get to keep serving with more projects that you engage in.
Silver's wig and fun outfits. How much fun is it to get into character with hair, makeup, wardrobe every morning you're on set?
I love Silver's look. Um, but oh my God. First of all, she has such fun outfits. Especially I think in season 3. I remember working with the costume department and they had pulled all of these great garments and they just had so much fun mixing and matching. I'm excited for you guys to get to see what she wears in season 4. But I always said that when I put on her wig, that's when I felt like I was stepping into Silver. And I did film season 3 of Ginny and Georgia concurrently with The Abandons. And so for a while, in like lead up to it, I had said, okay, Katelyn, how are you going to differentiate when you feel like Samara and when you feel like Silver? But to be honest with you, Silver's wig just kind of does a lot of that for me. I made all of these playlists to go with each character and I did all of these things. But when it comes down to it, I think that when I put that wig on, and then also her Doc Martens, those are such a signature look for her. I feel like I'm right back in her world. But yeah, she's so fun and I love her sense of style and creativity. I was never that out there when I was in high school, so it feels like a chance to go back and just be more inventive.
working closely with actors like Sarah and Felix, who are, series regulars, their day in and day out, working on their characters. What was that like for you? And did you learn anything from, watching them in their scenes and acting together that's kind of inspired you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the two of them are so talented. Felix was the first person I actually met on set. Excuse me. The first scene that you're introduced to Silver, you're not really introduced to her, but you see her in episode 2 of season 2 in a hallway, and she's sitting beside Felix, or Marcus. So Felix was like the first friend that I made on that set, and he was so welcoming and so kind. And then he was just always lovely to chat with. Um, and then Sarah is just a natural. She's so funny. Her comedic timing is effortless. And I found it was one of those things where you absorb by watching, and they're so comfortable in what they do that it was just kind of like a gift to get to sit there in the scene and go, oh wow, I mean, I remember reading this on the page, but you've lifted this and made it something entirely different. And so they just bring such life to what they present on screen. They're just so great at what they do.
Well, I'm excited to see everyone, yourself included, in a season 4, so can't wait for whenever that comes out. I know there's usually a wait for fans, and they're like every year it's like, where's the next season of Ginny and Georgia? But until then, people can watch you in the Abandons, and we are discussing spoilers for season 1, so please make sure you have finished all 7 episodes before continuing. What can you share about your audition process and what drew you to the project and the character of Samara?
The audition process was strangely one of the easiest I've ever done. Um, I remember I got the self-tape request, and it was one of those things where they're like, hey, so my team was like, so sorry, Katelyn, it's like 9 o'clock, but we need this by like 9 o'clock the next day or something. It was a very quick turnaround. Um, and so I was like, okay, no problem. So I went into my studio and I worked with my coach, and we kind of just threw the scenes up and I sent it off, and then you just forget about it. That's the process of an actor. You do so many auditions that you'll never get. So once you do them, you have to, like, for your own sanity, just let it go. Um, and then I'd say maybe like a month later, I got an email from my team that said, hey, casting loved your tape. They're sending you up at Netflix just to let you know. And I was like, okay, great. And then a couple weeks later, a friend of mine had said, hey, Caitlin, remember that project that you were auditioning for and that character? Well, I have an audition for her. And I was like, oh man, all right, well, I didn't get it, but like, okay, best of luck. And then a month later, I got a call saying, yep, here's the offer. And so I don't understand. It was like a 3-month waiting process, but really it was just off of one tape. So easy, but certainly not quick. And then in terms of the project itself, obviously I was very excited about the creative team. I was very excited about it being a Western. I love period pieces. I did work on a show called Anne with an E before, so like I have delved into the world of, the 1800s or that time period sort of. Um, and that's always fun. But I do know that I was one of the first few who was cast in the show. I think it was like Lena and Jillian and Nick and I and maybe Ashling. And then I had like closed my deal, and then all of the strikes happened. So everything was put on pause. And for the longest time, I just kept waiting to be like, wow, okay, so like who else is joining us? And when everything was over, it was so exciting getting to see all the names that were rolling in. Um, but yeah, I mean, who doesn't want to be part of a Western?
Do you remember what scenes were part of your audition that you had to perform?
Yes. Oh man, I had 2 scenes. One of them, oh gosh, I only remember one of them. And it was a scene that ended up getting deleted from the pilot, but essentially, um, it was an interaction between Samara and Albert, and then her father. And I think the point of the scene was to just showcase the dynamics between the three of them. Um, and in the pilot episode, there was a scene where after we gave a spoiler alert already, yeah? So I can I can say anything. Okay. Um, After all of the cattle are run off the cliff in Cowpocalypse, um, all of the neighbors come and like help clean up and help their neighbors. And when my dad and I arrive, I like run towards Albert and I'm like, what's going on? What have you? And my father is very overprotective and has kept me quite isolated. So in the scene, I remember him like sending me off and yeah, I don't know. I think even the audition scene was different from what we shot on the day, but it was like it was a pretty simple scene. I think in total I had like 5 pages.
I feel like you telling me now what was kind of removed can maybe answer a question that I have shortly. So we will get to that. It involves Albert, but with Samara and her father, they are one of four families of Jasper Hollow. What backstory were you given for her, and what did you create yourself to give her a grounding point?
Um, okay. I'm gonna be really careful here because I was given her and Miles's entire backstory. Um, And in the off chance that we do get a season two, I don't want to give everything away because I'm sure that would be a great reveal to give audiences. Um, but I do know that I can say she and Samara and her father have been on the move for her entire life. Um, her her mother died when she was very young, so she didn't really get to know her mom at all. And I think from her understanding, she and her father were just kind of, transient in the sense that they just kept moving on. What she wasn't aware of is that they were on the run. She wasn't aware that they were in any danger. And she certainly didn't understand why her father was so jaded or why he felt like they needed to protect themselves from everyone else. Um, but I do feel like, in terms of the dynamic between the two of them, I always felt that Samara was a little bit of the opposite of Miles in that he's pretty stoic, he's, pretty emotionally unavailable. And she's the opposite. She's so compassionate and empathetic. And I always felt like that was her trying to make up for the lost presence of her mom and what her mother would have brought to their household. It's clear that Miles really loved his wife, and so that was never in question. And she doesn't really, Samara doesn't get to miss her mom in the same way 'cause she didn't know her. But I think the two of them miss whatever presence that she would have brought to the household. So there's just that dynamic I think that she tries to make up for.
I know that you mentioned they were on the move, but they have seemed to have been in Jasper Hollow for some time because we know that they have the established grain fields, and that ends up kind of in their distiller shop that they do run in Angel's Ridge.
Yes, so they have actually been in Angel's Ridge for about 10 years, which is the longest they've ever settled anywhere. Um, Prior to that, they had, uh, well, they're in like Washington territory now, but they had made their way up through California, essentially, is what I'd been told. Um, but going back to the grounding point, that was something that reminded me of uh, our sets were incredible. They genuinely built everything from the ground up. Our production designer is so talented. And I remember the first day that I got brought to the Alderton cabin, um, our crew was so generous in letting me have a few moments to myself inside the house. And I went into Samara's bedroom and I sat on her bed and I just gave myself a moment to think or to imagine myself being in her world without everyone else around to feel like, okay, this is my home and this is where I wake up every day. Um, it really felt like one of those unique opportunities where you really feel like you're in your character's world. That was cool.
How old is Samara supposed to be when we meet her?
She's in her young 20s age. It's not specific, but like somewhere between 22 and 24.
I feel like that though is something that would help because it's different than being like say 16 or 17, right? She has a bit more of like a maturity to her. And you mentioned, kind of being a caretaker for her father, like that kind of, I think that is a line in the show as well that she, like a comment, offhand comment she makes towards her dad in terms of like the cleaning and the cooking. How would you describe the Samara we meet in 1854? I know you touched on it a bit, but what would you say are her key personality traits, qualities, and what mannerisms did you have or carry well in character?
First of all, that was one of my favorite lines, um, where she just gives her dad a little bit of attitude back. Love that for her. But I I will say I was also given a unique amount of information prior to the beginning of filming in that I knew exactly, well, I knew how my character's arc would go. Um, I knew that in the end she would be essentially the Judas and she would betray her neighbors, and whatnot. But to me, it was also very important that we understood what it would take for her to get there. And so it was important that when you meet her as she has always been. She is very naive because she hasn't had a lot of life experience. That's really been kept from her. Um, she's kind, she's sweet, she's the epitome of good. Um, but I also think that, quite honestly, she is much too soft for the world that she lives in, so she couldn't possibly stay that way. And one of my favorite traits of Samara is how defiant she is. She's a very strong woman. It's just that her strength is pretty quiet. And so you can see her defiance right from episode one, but it is something that grows. So by the time you get to, let's say, episode five, where she learns a little bit more about the truth of her father, and there is this realization that there is so much she doesn't understand, and there's so much that's been kept from her. There's something I think that unlocks inside of her that goes, wait a minute. I do think it is time to start asking questions and all of these instincts that I've been shutting down. I think we're going to stop doing that. And and then I think her strength becomes a little bit louder. And by the time you get to episode seven, and Garret reveals the whole truth to her of, the fact that her father is an outlaw and um, there are warrants for his arrest and, he's killed people and what have you. I think that's a turning point for Samara where she can never go back. And I mean, Ryan and I talked about this, but we had predicted that for all of the protection that Miles offered Samara, there would come a time where Samara had to offer the same to him. And so you finally get to see in that last scene of the two of them in their cabin, it's finally Samara taking charge and her going, "All right, it's my turn to take care of you." And you see how that defiance has now grown into a strength that is a little bit more unshakable than you've ever seen. Um, so yeah, it was important that you saw that arc because also, if we do get a season two, she's also hit another turning point where she can't go back, and I'd be really excited to see just where that leads.
Definitely. And I do want to talk a bit more about that dynamic. And I know you mentioned her being a bit naive, and that's true. She was kind of sheltered her entire life. But at the same time, she's always had a strong work ethic. So it's interesting to see that later translated into her actions against others and, her father, who she clearly does love. Can you take me through filming of that pivotal episode one scene where Dahlia is raped by Willem and Samara is witness to the aftermath? Like, how was that to film emotionally? And for your character in that moment, what is she feeling?
Well, for me personally, it was a very safe set. So everyone was very protected in that sense. It was a closed set for the filming of the incident itself. Um, and then in terms of, when Samara runs on the scene, I think that she's very conflicted. Obviously, she's appalled at what she is seeing. And yet, if you really pay attention, she's the only one who tries to save Willem. So everyone else leaves him be. They, with, a lot of understanding, are happy to just see if he's met his fate. But Samara's not okay with that. She is absolutely against what Willem has done, and she's angry with him. She doesn't support that, but she also doesn't want him to die, and so she tries to save his life. And when her father comes and tries to take her away, she's again a moment of defiance. I can't just leave. I just think that she's again, this is a moment where she's so compassionate that she does have empathy for everyone. So it's such a hard place to be in, as a character. But I do love that she tries so hard to save someone who's so wicked.
In episode four, Samara walks by the schoolhouse and sees Albert and Lucinda talking. Their pleasantries appear to affect her. So, can you expand on the reason behind her reaction and if it's kind of related to those scenes that we didn't get to see you share with opposite Lamar as Albert?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There was a storyline between Samara and Albert, that had been cut in the final edit. That probably would have explained a little bit more of like their dynamic and their relationship. But overall, that moment in and of itself is also pretty indicative of the disappointment that Samara feels in how difficult it is for her to connect with people. Um, the thing is, she's really yearning for not only life experience, but also connection and friendship. And, um, she watches her neighbors, the four of them, and they're so close and they're, close in age. And her father has really kept her from everyone. And at this point in life, who doesn't need a friend? She's really yearning for that. And so I think when she watches Albert and Lucinda chatting, it's like, wow, this woman who has just come to town has already found someone to connect with. My God, this is so hard to realize that I've been here this whole time and I still can't seem to, build that connection with anyone. Um, which also is a catalyst for how unapologetic she is in building her connection with Garret. So I think that that scene, um, is actually a great setup for an audience's understanding of why her connection with Garret is actually so pure.
I love how you explain that in terms of a connection standpoint, because to be honest, I automatically jumped to like, oh, was there something romantic there? And who knows, maybe there was this underlying thing, or maybe it was just about friendship, or I don't know if you can say too much about that.
Um, I don't know. I mean, no one said I couldn't. So there was a moment, where, the storyline was that Samara had a crush on Albert, and there were scenes where the two of them were together, and it was unrequited. And so, I mean, Albert is so kind, but just the feeling itself was more platonic for him. Um, so that moment where she sees him with Lucinda is a little bit of a double-edged sword for her.
I think that it is something that, especially when you're in your 20s, I'm sure you do just want to feel like connected with people your own age. Like you mentioned, she's been like attached at the hip with her father for so long. And like you mentioned, it was kind of a catalyst in terms of her and Garret. So she comes across him preparing his remembrance for Willem's memorial. Tell me about initiating that interaction, knowing that there is some danger there. He is a Van Ness, and the weight of her knowledge of the whole situation.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's funny that you say that there's a danger there because there certainly is, and that's something that she's constantly navigating throughout the season when it comes to that growing relationship with him. Um, but I mean, okay, first I'll start with saying I've seen a lot of people online saying that, there's a romantic spark between Samara and Garret. But the truth is, Lucas and I were not really playing that. For us, we had talked about it, and it was actually more so this platonic friendship. And if you think about it, they're actually more, these two characters are more similar than you think, in that they've both been pretty sheltered from getting to have any sort of connection outside of their family. And Garret is either to be feared or to be loathed. He's part of the rich family who owns the town, and so people are honestly either always like sucking up to him or they hate him. And so I think it's been difficult for him to also find a genuine connection. So the relationship that I think that they're building is out of this pure sense of I see you for who you are. And they start building this friendship that is actually like very sweet. Um, and so the first time that you see them interact, I think you can see the both of them weighing what it means for this connection to feel so easy. And is it, as you said, like, is it safe to follow? Obviously, Samara knows what happened to his brother, and that's a secret that she's keeping from him. Um, and Garrett's aware of what his family is doing to the Hollow, so it's like the both of them are engaged in this very destructive path towards each other, and yet it's a different kind of star-crossed lover. It's not a lover, it's just a friendship that's really sweet, I think.
And you see Samara, like she's there to be kind and offer support, which is something that he hasn't really received as well, especially from people who are by social standards like of a lower status than him. On the topic again of her father, like you mentioned in episode 5, his past begins to show itself. How is Samara processing this new information about the father she thought she knew?
Ooh, okay. Yeah, that morning, so the morning after the shootout is very complicated for her. I remember talking to my hair and makeup department, and I had said, I really want it to feel like, in terms of her look, she's been up all night. She's got a lot to think about. She's very upset. Um, and the problem is the one person that she loves the most, that she's always put her trust in, has suddenly become the person that she can't trust. He's broken that trust with a secret that feels larger than life. And yet she loves him so much. I mean, it's not that he did anything to her other than lie. And so she's weighing this sense of How could you lie to me? But also, how do I feel about your truth? I've always found myself to be a very moral person. Um, and yet I'm faced with your extreme sense of immorality. I mean, you've killed people. I just watched you kill people. That, like, it's just such a shock to her that I think she feels really betrayed, but she also feels a little guilty for feeling this way towards her father. She's never felt that before. Um, and her father consents it. Um, but I also think that that is a breaking open point for her too. That leads to her sense of, okay, by the way, babe, you don't have to be moral all the time. I think that's the first time she's ever thought to herself, there's permission to be granted to be amoral. And then, of course, that makes sense with what she chooses to do just a couple of episodes later. Um, but I mean, I'm trying to, like, metaphorically, it's like the first time somebody tells you, no, you are allowed to lie if you want to. Anytime you want, you can lie. And a child going, wait, I can? And it's just like, I think her whole world is rocked. Um, so yeah, she's got a lot to weigh and to think about there.
I think it was really key when she questions his love for her late mother, because that's something obviously that there's still a lot of, hurt and longing there for both of them. So tell me about that line. Like, was the objective to hurt him?
I don't no, I don't think it was to hurt him, but I think it was an unapologetic confession of how much he had hurt her. And I mean, the only thing Samara's ever been allowed to know is life with her family, well, with her father. Um, and the idea of her mother has been ever present. So now that Samara feels like her whole life has been a lie, I mean, it's not just his past that he's lied about. He lied about the fact that they've been on the run this whole time. Samara had no idea that they were in hiding or that all of this overprotectiveness was a result of the fact that she did kind of need to be protected from a danger that she was unaware of. Um, and so that makes her question, if you've lied about this, what else have you lied about? And then, she spirals a little. She questions everything. Okay, everything I've ever known is a lie. So does that mean the truth that you've told me about how much you loved my mother is also a lie? Like, I think the deep sense of betrayal runs so deeply that she just needs to check in to see what it is that she can trust. So, no, I don't think that she's trying to hurt him, but she's very much saying, you need to know how much you've hurt me.
And she just so deeply wants, clarity of the situation. And there's so much to uncover that it can't all be done, so quickly. There's years here of secrets that she wasn't aware about. So soon after that, Garret expresses gratitude to Samara and interest in getting to know her. Are there any red flags for her with his intentions?
No. No, sadly, I think she's very unaware. I think that Samara, first of all, we as an audience know that in that moment, Garrett is being manipulative. I don't think Samara knows that he's being manipulative. I think that she's assuming he is building on the connection that they've just begun building. Um, but at the same time, you can see in her face that she knows she has to be careful. So actually, I think that in that moment between the two of them, she feels like she's the one that has something to hide. And uh, I mean, in the moment where she like kind of walks away from him and like shuts her ledger, you can kind of see in her face that she's going, okay, Samara, be very careful about what we're saying here. And also, toe the line between getting to know him and letting him in so completely that you let him know about things he should not know about. So I think she feels really um, dishonest and she doesn't like it.
I think for viewers, it's unfortunate though, because like you mentioned, in that moment, she feels like she has a bit of that power, although ultimately, Garrett's the one kind of toying with her. But after her father arrives, she's kind of listening in on that final interaction between Garrett and her father, and she's smiling. So, like in that moment, was it just about a pure platonic connection, or do you think there was any romantic interest in him at that point?
No, I really don't think that there was. I do think, I'm not saying that the idea of a romantic connection is off the table. In fact, I think that what she's building with Garrett is such a genuine platonic relationship that that probably would be the most stable foundation for a romantic relationship if ever that's what that turned into. Um, but if you think about it, this is like her first friend. And I don't think that we should overlook how important friendship is. Um, Loyalty and friendship are key themes in the whole show. She's just the one person who doesn't really have that. And so I think when you see her in the back listening in to the conversation between Miles and Garrett, that is a result of two things. One, she doesn't trust her father right now, so she wants to know what's being said when she's not in the room. And also, I mean, her father's made it pretty clear he doesn't like her being around Garrett or men or anyone. And so she wants to know what he's going to say to him. And there's, I think, maybe a little bit of protectiveness there of, if you've ever had one of those overprotective fathers who's like, I'm going to have a talk with this boy who's coming over, you're like, oh no. You like panic a little. And so I think it was the dynamic, both of those dynamics for her.
I like how you added in the father doesn't like her around. You added and anyone because when you think about it, like Dahlia and Little Bull, they're, I mean, maybe a bit younger, but around the same age as Samara. So it's like she couldn't even have these like girl friendships, even though she's been, in the same space as them for the past 10 years. How does the episode 6 scene further cause a divide between the families of the Hollow once they convene after Fiona turns down the land deal that they all voted on?
Um, so I think up until that point, you see the Hollow being somewhat of a unit. We're all, whether we're disagreeing or not, we've all decided to come together and work together to save each other because we're all equally under attack. And this is the first moment of division, I think, that they all experience because one of them, being Fiona, has disrespected everyone else. And I don't know if you want to say betrayed them, that's maybe a little bit too much, but she goes against everyone else's wishes. And so suddenly the Hollow starts to have to question the alliance that they felt was pretty strong up until that point. Um, but yeah, I think it is interesting what you said about like Samara not being allowed to have any friendships with even her female neighbors. That's how mistrusting Miles is of absolutely everyone. You can't trust anyone but me, is what he says, which again goes to show you how deep that betrayal is going to be when she realizes, oh, and I can't even trust you. Okay.
And what's interesting in that episode 16 is, her father, who previously had been so mistrusting of it seemed like Fiona and her family, like he almost kind of takes her side a bit. He's the one that kind of goes with Fiona to secure and make that deal and is there when she comes out and says, it can't be done. Constance knows. For Samara, I imagine it was quite jarring to watch Fiona and her son Elias kind of get into that physical altercation and know how it's even breaking their family apart as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that violence is something that she's absolutely not akin to, and suddenly it's everywhere. Um, I mean, right from episode one, you have the violence between Willem and Dahlia. Then in episode five, you have the shootout, which is extremely violent. Then suddenly in episode six, you have like this fight between mother and son, and it's like, I think it really is rattling for someone who isn't used to any of that. Um, and goes to speak to the idea of her realizing family is not as or the bond between family is not as unbreakable as she probably grew up thinking that it was.
On that note, take me through Garrett's offer and Samara's ultimate decision to go against her father and the Hollow and implicate them against, her father telling her about the risks and everything involved with that. Like, what did she think would happen next?
Okay, so first of all, it's important to know that she really trusts Garrett. She doesn't realize that there's any reason not to, and she thinks, wow, he's just given us saving grace here. Why are we not taking it? Then, um, she tries to go and speak to her father about, this is the reality of what's going on. This is our only option. I mean, it's been presented to her as the only option, and she's naive enough that she believes it. And so when her father says, "Sorry, that's like you can't trust them," there's already this inherent distrust that Samara has for her father, which is, I think, what helps Garrett's manipulation work as well as it does. When Miles says there's no deal to be made, I think that Samara is assuming this is him just being stubborn again. I mean, but she's absolutely her father's daughter. The two of them are extremely stubborn, and I think that she felt, um, if we don't take this deal, you will go away. The police or whoever are they're coming for you. They're going to take you away, and then I will have no one. I cannot have that. And so, even though uh, friendship and loyalty and morality have been, some of the most important things to Samara, nothing trumps the importance of her father. And in this season, every single character is being asked, how far would you go and what would you do to protect the one that you love? And for Samara, I think it came down to if I don't protect my father, I will lose him. And that was just not an option for her. So she had to make a terrible choice and decide who she was going to hurt, and it wasn't going to be her father. So, in order to protect him and do the thing that he'd been doing for her whole life, she made the hard decision and went to Garrett.
That was so well explained and spoken. And, she does sincerely believe she is securing her father's freedom and safety. Um, Although I do have to say, I would never forgive Samara if she caused Walter and Otto's deaths. I feel like that was left in the air, like because they do arrive when Walter is at the grave site. And then you don't see what happens. Like he is not there at the end. I'm not sure if you're allowed to say if he's dead or alive.
I cannot say, but what I will say is, regardless of that, there's no way that Walter was going to the house or the Van Ness homestead to engage in any sort of fighting. The funny part about Walter and Brian, who plays him, who's so lovely and just a talented actor, um, but Walter is he keeps to himself. And so if he doesn't have to be involved in anything, he won't be. Um, so I think at that point in the story, Walter is very much engaged in getting together his family, Sweetie, his dog, included, and Otto, and just kind of preparing them to leave because he thinks he's going to lose his land. And so I think regardless of his fate, he was never going to go to the Van Ness homestead.
That's a good point. Like he was not going, if they offered this is the last stand, he likely would have again sat that one out. So, I feel like we need a season two to find out what happens there. And if not, we need someone to tell us if Samara was ultimately responsible for that. But that being said, what were your thoughts when you found out about the cliffhanger to end the season finale with respect to Fiona versus Constance and who makes it out of that fire?
I loved it. I mean, I think it's a great place to end a season. It does give you enough intrigue to want to come back and know exactly how the story continues. Um, I know all of us were asking, like, wait, but who is it? And the script never says. Um, we as a cast know a few things, so um, I mean, it's not that we are completely in the dark, but just in terms of like storyline, I think that that's a great moment to have as your last moment, especially because the show itself is mainly about these two matriarchs and the war that they have just between each other. So I thought that that was a perfect wrap up between the two of them. And I mean, God, if you look at all of the scenes that Lena and Julian share throughout the season, they look like they want to murder each other in every scene that they share. These women hate each other. Um, just, oh my God, Constance and Fiona are like two sides of the same coin, if you think about it. They're so similar, and yet they feel so different, but they're not. And so, anyway, I thought that that was a great moment to leave us on.
And it reminds you about just how high stakes these situations are. And like you mentioned, they are really similar in the lengths that they go to protect what is important and valuable to them. If renewed for a season two, what do you hope to see from Samara, given her actions at the end of the first season? And are there any specific relationships you'd like to explore with her and any other characters?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, I'm excited to see what the fallout would be of what she's done. You can't not address that. Um, but then also, I'm very well aware that, again, she's so changed by the choice that she has made. And I think that we would find her in a place where, A, she has to own what she's done. And I think that she would become a more unapologetic version of herself. Um, it feels like in this first chapter, you have to meet everyone as they are to then appreciate where they're going from here. And so if you've watched Samara be this innocent and naive young woman, well, suddenly she's not innocent and she's not naive anymore. So getting to see that like darker side of her, that has been unlocked, oh, I would love to get to explore that.
In terms of character relationships, is there anyone you'd like to kind of see that relationship further develop or any interactions?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, we only really got the beginning of Samara and Garrett's relationship. Um, I don't know where we would pick up in a season two, if it would be right after or a little bit time has passed. So I don't know if or when Samara would find out that Garrett actually manipulated her. But I think that friendship has so much left to be explored. Um, and I do think that that friendship could survive a betrayal. That's how much I think that relationship was like genuine. I would also be interested to explore her new relationship with her father. Um, because that's forever changed too. And again, I mean, I've said this before, but like Samara really is her father's daughter. And I think for the first time, now Miles is going to see that too in a very different way. So I think those two characters I'd be most interested to see dynamics progress.
Definitely as characters evolve, like those relationships change. So it would be so interesting to explore those. How was your experience working opposite a veteran actor like Ryan Hurst as your on-screen father? Like, how was he as a person and a scene partner?
Oh man, Ryan's lovely. He's first of all extremely talented and like effortlessly so. Um I remember being opposite him in our first scene in the cabin, which would have been episode 5. And I've told him this, but like we we shot that scene and we did his coverage first. And I was so happy that we did because he just came in and killed it. And I was like, "Oh my God. Okay. All right. We got to bring it." Um but the funny thing is that he's also just so quiet. And so he'll go from sitting in the green room just like being very relaxed to then going on set and killing a scene and then going right back to sit down in the green room. And so he's just like very calm. Um, I think he's so experienced that for him, this is probably just second nature to him at this point, or at least that's how it comes off. But he's also, I mean, really generous as a scene partner. I will never forget during episode 7, we were filming a scene at the Alderton cabin, and I was telling him I was really nervous about this upcoming scene because I didn't want it to come off this way or that way. And he's like, well, okay. Well, what about that? And he starts walking through the scene with me and kind of helping me talk things out. And that's just a generosity that your scene partner does not have to give you. But he did that without even thinking about it. So he's very generous. He's very smart. I think if you go back and look at our entire text thread, it's just a bunch of book recommendations that we're sending to each other. He's also an avid reader. Um, he has the coolest life stories. If you ever get a chance to sit down and chat with him, man, this man has lived. Yeah, he was just a joy to work with. I love that man.
That's so amazing to hear. And I know it's always also so nice to be able to chat with your co-star, with a fellow actor about your characters, because I know even earlier on you mentioned like, oh, we kind of discussed our father-daughter dynamics, and to be able to kind of flush that out together gives so much more meaning and weight to your scenes as well, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I think that if how do I put this? I mean, different actors approach their work differently. I'm of the opinion that I think it really helps you do your best work when you can chat with your scene partner about the dynamics of your characters or a background. And so Ryan and I did talk about that at the beginning. He had ideas about what their home life was like and um, what their characters had been through, and then so did I. And so we shared them. And I think we really only had to chat about it at the very beginning, and we kind of established quite a bit. And then a lot of our dynamic was built in the moment. Um, the the truth is that their relationship is actually very complex. Like Miles and Samara are different in the way that they present themselves, and yet, I mean, they've lived with each other all their lives. So we had to establish like what is their energy with each other. Um, the most important thing that I wanted to establish from the beginning is like how much does he love her and how comfortable are they, right? Because especially in the time period, women didn't necessarily have a lot of rights or a lot of respect, and yet all Miles does is respect his daughter in the best way that he knows how. He loves her so much. I mean, he loves her more than anything. And so yeah, we talked a lot about our dynamic at the very beginning. And then I think that we let just our natural energy with each other play out on screen.
It was such a treat to watch you two together. So I sincerely hope this isn't the end for Miles and Samara. How is it working with the rest of the accomplished cast? Like, especially those group scenes with the families of the Hollow, but then also later your solo scenes opposite Lucas, where you get to see this different side of her.
It was great. I mean, I'm for sure a better actor for having worked on this project and worked with my cast and also my crew and our creatives. It felt like getting to walk into work, working with the best of the best in that sense. Everyone is so well established and at the same time so easy to work with. And I'm sure that that's just a sign of having the years of experience under their belt that they have. Um, but like they work with such ease, and our set didn't have any egos on it, which is crazy for the amount of actors that we have. We have a huge ensemble cast. Um, but also like nobody likes an actor that has an ego. And yet I feel like it's this unwritten rule in our industry that the more successful you are, the more accepting it generally is if you have an ego because, well, you're successful, so you kind of earned it. And so if you were to apply that, like tons of our actors could have had that like concept, and yet no one did. Everyone was so um uh like welcoming, but also like approachable. Um, right from day one, I didn't feel like I didn't belong. In fact, I think this is one thing that I thanked everybody for was I just felt like they made sure that I felt like I belonged. So everyone was so lovely, but also watching them um, work while we're in a scene with each other, again, you just watch how easy and effortless it is for them. And I think I absorbed a lot of that, and I got rid of a lot of ideas I had about how you had to prepare to be on set. It's like, no, it doesn't actually have to be that hard. You can let it be natural. Um, so yeah, I think if anything, I didn't want to let my cast members down because I knew that they were going to come ready to play. And so, therefore, it was my responsibility to then give them a scene partner that they deserved as well.
I'm sure you held your own just fine, as we see in the show. So it's so nice to take these experiences with you, though, from a project. Do you have a favorite behind the scenes memory from set that you can share?
Ooh, I mean, there's so many. Ugh, that was like so far like the best year of my life. We had so much fun. Um, I would say one of three. One, Lucas and I were leaving set one night and we saw the Northern Lights, and I had never seen them before, at least not with my own eyes. Um, and so we were just like we were so shocked. It was so beautiful, and our driver was kind enough to pull over and we got out and we just like took a second to look at that. Anyway, that was gorgeous. Um, so that was fun. Also, I ended up shooting on my birthday. Um, and I had like invited folks out to like have a drink or something after work. Mostly I just didn't want to be alone on my birthday. I was like, oh, if one person comes, that would be great. And genuinely, like everyone came, and that's probably my favorite birthday I've ever had. I just felt so loved getting to see everyone. Um, and I think that's a testament to like how much our cast loves each other. Everyone's so great. But then in terms of just like actually working, um, there's a scene that got cut from the pilot where Samara ends up falling off of a cliff, rolling down, and coming face to face with like a wolf pack. And I mean, I'm so sad that that got cut, but it was the funnest thing to film, and it was like a 4 day sequence for me. Um, and so I think just like getting to work with real wolves is crazy. Who gets to say that? But it was also the first time I'd ever been on a call sheet, and I was the only person on on the call sheet's like page. And I felt like, wow, what a responsibility. And I didn't take that lightly. I knew that there were 150 people on set that day, and no one was going home until I did my job. And so it was a different feeling than when you have a scene partner and the two of you are, you know, working a scene. It was like, no, no, girl, this is just you. Um, and I loved the responsibility. I felt really great about it. So that's a moment in my career that I'll never forget.
Did they feel like they toughened Samara up too early or something? And they were like, we're gonna cut the scene. Did it happen after like around the same time as the cattle incident or?
Happened right after, actually. I don't know why it got cut. I think it was just in terms of like focusing the narrative of the pilot. Um, but it happened right after Cowpocalypse, which is still my favorite word that has come out of the show. Um, but yeah, essentially right after like the neighbors come to help them out. Once again, my father doesn't want me to be around anyone, and I get sent off and I'm going to like pick berries and I fall. So sad, but so fun to film. So fun, especially falling off the cliff. Wow. That was so fun.
So did you have like a stunt double as well? Or was it just you?
I mean, I did have a stunt double, but the fall itself, um, they offered me a stunt double for it. And I was like, if you feel like we can do this safely, I would love to do it. And so they did like a rig and essentially the like place that we had found for me to fall off. It was like a couple feet down, but they had like an air mattress essentially, and like it was a very safe fall. But you could cheat it to make it look like it was a huge fall. And then I remember okay, first of all, it's so fun, but I was so mad at myself because I did it too well. We got the shot in 3 takes. And they're like, "Oh my God, that was beautiful. Okay, moving on." I was like, "Why? Katelyn, why did you do that too well, too soon? You could have fallen like 10 times." So yeah, sadly I didn't really stretch that out for as long as I could have. That was my mistake.
You were like, I really need this to perfect my fall to be a future action star. But I mean, you did it obviously pretty well. And are you able to say, like, was it her father who ultimately came to her rescue?
It was, yeah. Yeah.
Which kind of, I think, would also fuel the further protective nature that he has, where he's like, I can't even send her to collect berries now without her falling into danger.
Yeah, what a way to like not bring any confidence to this idea that like don't worry, you can trust her, she'll be fine.
I would have loved to see that. If they ever release deleted scenes, that one has to be at the top of the list.
Yeah, maybe I should email Netflix and just say like, "Hey guys, have we thought about a deleted scenes option?" Um, which would actually be a genius idea. I think I should email someone, and that should be a new Netflix feature, like we used to have on DVDs, like our behind the scenes or our blooper reel, or yeah, that would be so fun. I should message someone.
I know that we didn't get to see Samara do much like horseback riding, but you did attend cowboy camp with some of the cast. You said gun training, driving a wagon. So how was that experience for you?
So much fun. I think, first of all, they were great in terms of giving everyone training right from the get-go and then having that be available throughout the season. Um, there were scenes where I was riding horseback that ended up not making the final edit, and that always happens, whether in TV or film, you'll have deleted scenes for whatever reason. But it was great because it helps you get into character and learn the skills that your character would have. Um, and it's also, you know, if it was like ever needed, we could call on that skill, which is always nice to have. I mean, as an actor, you never want to show up on set and have them go, "Oh, you know what would be really great? Can we have you just get on a horse and what have you?" And you're like, no, I can't do that." It's like, it's just best to have it all in your back pocket. And then if you need to pull it out, great, I'm ready. Let's go. That sense of preparedness is something that gives me a lot of comfort. So, I went to cowboy camp. I learned about guns, even though I hate them. Um, I did learn how to drive a like horse-drawn wagon. I did learn how to horseback ride. Um, I'm trying to think what else we learned. And then like our costuming was so period appropriate. Roland Sanchez is our costume designer. This man is one of my favorite men on earth. He is so lovely and so great at his job, and so yeah, I think the whole production did such a great job in making us feel like we are really in this world.
As we kind of round things out here, that was going to be my next question, being set in 1854, like being transported back in time with the costumes, but also the sets and the character dialogue. How was that for you?
It was great. I mean, the thing is, so we were shooting in the mountains in Calgary, and I genuinely think of the 7 months that I was out there, I think I had one day in the studio. Everything else was shot on location, and that's pretty easy to do when they've genuinely built our sets on location. So the Alderton cabin is a real cabin that you can walk into. Like when you see it in episode 5 and in episode 7, like that's a real cabin that they built. Um, Same with all of the homesteads of the folks in Jasper's Hollow. Um, and so anytime you're going to shoot on location as an actor, I think that it's easier to feel like you're in that world, but especially in a period piece, between the costumes, between the landscape, between your sets, it's very easy to forget that there's a camera on you and it's very easy to just drop in. So that's like a real luxury to have. Um, and then just being in the mountains in Calgary, even on your day off. Um, I used to like tell my crew, guys, there might be a scene that's coming up where Samara has to ride. So maybe I could just like take a horse out today. And they're like, yeah, of course. I just wanted to like go out into the mountains and like check it out. And so, yeah, it was a gift that like none of us took for granted.
I don't think that Samara has scenes, or at least that made the cut in like the bar or the saloon, but did you get to like walk around town and explore the other locations?
Oh, absolutely. She doesn't in this season have a scene in the bar, but the town itself is a real town that they built. And so anytime that we were on a set that's located in town, if you're in between takes, you can just walk around. Um, I remember, I mean, some of my favorite days on set were when we were all there. Like our green room had 20 chairs for cast members, and we were usually set up in the bar. And like even the bar, it's crazy how much the show couldn't show you in terms of like how many details were built because that bar has a whole second floor that was done. Um, the Van Ness building has all of these rooms that you don't get to see. And I mean, it helps add to the world just knowing that they're all there, but like it's so sad that you'll never get to see what we got to walk around in because I mean our town had streets and each street had real buildings and you could walk inside all of these buildings. It was like have you oh gosh, what do you call those? Have you ever been to like a pioneer village? No? Okay, so in Ontario, they have this thing called Pioneer Village where they've tried to like reconstruct what a town might have looked like in like the 1800s. It was like that, but 10 times more detail. Truly, our production designers are so thoughtful. Um, and yeah, I think I'll have to go back and look through my phone for all the videos that I took because that was the coolest thing. And then of course we'd have like 200 extras to just make this town feel alive. And, if you look in the background, I think there's like shower stalls and there are men like really taking showers in there. So, like, they did such a great job at making this whole world feel alive. So, yeah, that set was crazy.
It truly does take a village. And like you mentioned, I mean, there was like the chapel and the schoolhouse. So there are so many different like pieces that we got to see, but so much that well, is just in your camera roll. So hopefully it makes an appearance at some point on social media. I have one more question for you, our signature question. If you could be any ice cream flavor, which would you be and why?
This is so fun. Okay, I think I would probably be uh Kawartha Dairy's cookies and cream, which Kawartha Dairy is like the best ice cream that you can get in Ontario. But also cookies and cream was my favorite flavor growing up. It is very much not Oreo. It's its own thing, I swear. Um, but yeah, that just reminds me of my childhood and anytime we'd go to get ice cream after like a soccer game or something. Um, so yeah, maybe I would choose that just for like nostalgic reasons.
I love that. And at the same time, I love that you're like, it's not cookies and cream. So don't even like compare that they're the same flavor. But I feel like nostalgia is always the right way to go, right? You like to remember what flavors you liked when you were younger and growing up. And it's just been such a treat to get to speak with you, Caitlin, about your work in the abandons. I was such a big fan of not Samara's actions, but of course your acting in the show. So thank you so much for sharing about your time making the show.
These were amazing questions. Thank you so much for taking the time and also watching it. And you're a great interviewer. I mean, the amount of research that you did for this, I just want you to know, like, very well done. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. I hope we get to catch up in the future. But until then, for all those watching, make sure to catch Caitlin as Samara in The Abandoned. Season 1 is out now on Netflix. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.